I'd like to welcome everybody to the January 9th, 2020 Public Works Committee meeting. Roll call, please.
Chairman Lockmiller?
Here.
Alderman Leahy?
Here.
Alderwoman Parker Tice?
Here.
And Alderman Weggie is absent.
Move on to approval of the agenda. Any changes?
No.
Can we approve by acclamation?
No.
All right, it shall be. We have no appointments, announcements, or proclamations. Move on to citizen comment. Anybody from the audience like to make a comment? I don't see a lot of people out there. We'll move on to reports of committee chair. I have a couple of things. One, I guess you all have probably heard of the passing of one of our sanitation crew members, D'Angelo Bishop. Passed away at home, right, Paula? Is there any update as to funeral or?
Yes, the funeral arrangements were shared with me today, and I believe it is scheduled for next week, Wednesday, at
Well, if you want to just share.
at 9, starting at 9 to 11, at the Williams Temple Church of God in Christ, located at 1500 North Union Boulevard, and the church is located at the corner of North Union Boulevard and Dr. Martin Luther King Drive. I've heard from Dan, and Dan can speak to it. Very well liked gentleman with the department, hard worker, and this is a loss to the department, a loss to the city. Thoughts are with his family.
Yes, our condolences go to his family. Second issue I had was, I think, how do I rein this in? I think if we're going to have something where a request from an alderman where staff is it's going to take a lot of their time and energies, I think the best thing to do is, and I have no problem putting it on any agenda at any time, bring it to the committee first and let us discuss it here and then vote on whether we want to send it to staff and then go ahead and send a clear consent message as to what we want to have done. Now, this is not to say, hey, if you've got a question of Bowler, one of the department heads under Public Works Committee, that you shouldn't ask the question, or if a citizen is requesting something. I'm just saying we should probably discuss it here first, take a vote. If you still feel you're not getting just due, there's always the Board of Aldermen level to bring it up at that point. So that's just my comment. Andy?
No comment, no report.
Nancy?
No report.
City Administrator report? Anything, Boland?
I have no report. Thank you.
Department reports. We'll move on to Public Works Department. And Dan, you have an update?
Yeah, in particular, this is regarding the customer service renovations at City Hall. It's for information unless you have specific questions. But basically, I don't know. I know Alderman Leahy was there Tuesday. They're working on the floor tiles, so the stone tiles, they've got, I guess right now, maybe half done. They're concentrating on the medallion in front of the council chamber, so that's a decorative piece. And then most of the hallway's done. I know the hallway down at the end where the conference rooms are, that's done. And once they get done with all the flooring, then the goal is to finish out the low voltage and the lock sets and all that stuff to get that. Because they have to work with IT still to coordinate that. So you're going to have card readers on the doors for the outside and a couple interior ones. And then the IT closet will have a card reader too. That door was originally a key door. And over time, there's probably too many keys that are circulating, so now you're going to have control over it, who gets access in and out of that IT closet. Bathrooms are pretty much done, except for the changing stations needed to be mounted. Trying to think what else. Lights were done. All the electrical work is pretty much done, except putting face plates on and touch-up paint. So we're looking at end of January to have J.E. Foster done. They started doing work where Bull and Shelley will sit on the old area of planning and development, so that commenced. So they'll be putting up stud walls, doing the drop ceiling, and then they'll probably move in later than the rest of the group, but we're hopeful that the majority of the departments will move in February, and then we'll transition back to City Hall for our February meetings. Actually, we're transitioning to the rec center, but the goal would be to move it up, and if we can't, we'll just move it. We're going to be at the rec center during February, but we're going to try our best to get furniture moved back. We're going tomorrow to go pick out the furniture and finalize the order details. So we've looked at color swatches, but they've actually got them on display where you can actually see it, sit on it before you actually purchase it. So I don't know if you have any other questions on it.
Pictures of the flooring you have in your Dan are very attractive.
Yeah, and then the only other thing with the flooring is there'll be a slip-resistant coating. I know we've had Terry Johnson take a look at it, so the ADA ramp that switches back, that'll have a slip-resistant coating applied over it. So that stone will be rougher than the other areas. And then the exterior ADA will probably start like in March. We still have the area back by the library. So, but that we already have a contract from 2019. We just deferred it to 2020.
Do you anticipate any other change orders?
I hope not. The only one I thought Kyle was looking into was that the windowsills, the windowsill in the mayor's old office is different than what was in the conference room. But now that the walls are down and there's that retractable barrier when you're looking at them, one's like a different wood and then the other is like part wood and part brick. It's just odd. But we'll look at it. If it's not too expensive, we'll just make it uniform. That way it doesn't stick out. That's pretty much it.
Any other questions for Dan?
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Dan. I guess we'll move on to Parks and Rec.
So Eric is out sick, and at the last Public Works meeting, I think in November, staff was asked to search for an ordinance that would have been approved by the Board of Aldermen that would prohibit no parking signs, the placement of no parking signs along Russell Avenue. We were not able to find any such ordinance.
The ordinance is no overnight parking.
We couldn't find that.
Okay.
So we're just bringing this back as information.
Mm-hmm. Go from there.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for looking. Thank you.
Move into planning and development. Lisa, do you have an update on stormwater runoff for new and existing issues?
Good evening. This report also is just an update to provide you a timetable, no actions required from the committee tonight. So at the December meeting, you all provided staff and our consultant Horner and Schifrin with some good solid direction on how to start formulating some new stormwater drainage control requirements. So to update you all, since we met in December, staff met with Horner and Schifrin again, and we determined our best approach, best strategy would be that we're going to come back with you all with a new article in Chapter 500. In fact, we're going to entitle it Infill Development Stormwater Management. And we just think it's better after looking at some of our issues with the code is that we have things related to stormwater in 5 different sections of our code. So in particular, if someone wants to know what they need to do for new construction or for alterations, and these stormwater management control requirements kick in, there'll be one section to look at. So Horner and Schifrin, as part of their contract, is doing the drafting of the new requirements. What staff will still be doing is we're going to go back to those remaining 5 sections of the existing code, and once I get a draft in a couple weeks from Horner and Schifrin, then I'm going to go back to those 5 sections of the code, and not that we need to delete all of those, because one section, for instance, deals really more with the commercial construction and for sites that are more than 1 acre, which is totally different. So obviously we'll be keeping a lot of that, but I will be looking for any type of conflicts between the new requirements and what may be tucked in these existing sections. So that all needs to get done. We're hoping to have this all a draft to you at the February meeting for us to review, and then hopefully be able to proceed with adoption in March. If everything can kind of just stay in Chapter 500, I think maybe I mentioned this before, but then the review is that it just would be coming through committee and to the board. We would not have to go to Planning and Zoning Commission. And the other things, though, that we'll have to work in the meantime, which is not part of Horner and Schifrin's contract, but once we start to implement or institute this, we've got to think things like we're going to be referring to a best management practices manual. So we have some really good examples to kind of follow, but we're going to have to draft some kind of document for that purpose. And then also, if we need maybe forms or something to fill out, we'll have to do that. and also start looking for, because part of our conversation again is if people start submitting the stormwater plans with their projects, where the staff that we have now are not going to be the designers, and we're not even going to really be the reviewers. We would have an outside party do that. So that's what we'll also be looking for and getting ready for while we're drafting these ordinances, to try to kind of have the program all set up. So that's what we're going to do. So like I said, hopefully at the next meeting we'll start really having some things. We'll get it out to you before the meeting so you'll have a chance to read it. And then Horner and Schifrin has been invited back. Christy, I think, presents things really well. So she'll be here at the next meeting, and she'll probably take over on the presentation of those materials. So, is there any other questions? Or?
Annie?
All right, thank you.
Real quickly.
Sure.
On the existing conditions,
Yes, I'm sorry.
is that going to be done through a nuisance? or
Yes,
nuisance
so
codes?
we are gonna also be working on situations that we have that are with stormwater, but more of it's related probably to just sump pump discharge, as you had mentioned. So right now, we have one statement about that is tucked in our nuisance chapter. In fact, I'm glad you said it, because I did bring it up here with me, but all we have to really go on is water or other liquid diverted from a sump pump or other facility, structure, or device which flows onto streets and sidewalks. And that's kind of hard to work with in some respects. One, because it's pretty subjective. Is it even creating a nuisance? And secondly, we don't really think we want to totally limit water discharge coming out to the streets and flowing into proper gutters and storm systems.
Collections.
That's a way to get rid of water, to carry water. So we don't really like the way this was ever phrased. So yes, that will be part of the amendments that we bring back too. We'll fix this. In the meantime, once we get that new language kind of worked out, we'll go back to the agreement, that maintenance agreement we shared with you at the last meeting, and I think that will need a little bit more work. But after we get the code fixed and check that maintenance agreement again, then we will start enforcement on existing nuisance violations.
Great.
So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Move on to the consent agenda. It just has the meeting, or the minutes from last month's meeting. Can we approve that by acclamation?
Yes.
So it shall be done. And on to old business. We have the survey service for the city of Brentwood. Is that going to be Dan? Or?
Dan, I can chime in.
If you recall from before, we did an RFQ, we narrowed it down, shortlisted it, did interviews, brought that information to the committee, and then we were directed to go ahead and negotiate with TWM, who's also here tonight. So what we did was prepared an agreement, and in the agreement it actually breaks out the 8 different locations, and in those 8 different locations there's basically a minimum level of services that all of them receive. And then if, for instance, you needed additional work done, topography, whatever it is, for a particular site, you could elect to do that, and they've also figured out the price of that, but that's more or less a additional or optional service we don't necessarily need. And by that I mean, if you survey it, you do your boundary survey and you figure out that, hey, this actually doesn't belong to me, there's no need to take it further and actually do topography and additional work on it. You know, why would you do that if you don't own it? You know, the first go-around is just to figure out what does the city own.
I was gonna say, are we looking in the contract to get an identification of what particular easements or right-of-ways may actually exist? And then the city determines, what are we ever gonna do with them? Do we need to literally clean up the way they're registered? Is that the second part of the contract?
Within board docs,
Yeah.
under background,
Mm-hmm.
we, after that second paragraph,
Yep.
Right,
we
'cause you
list
get the bullets.
what, the steps of what will be done.
Yes,
Right.
there's an A through H and A through H,
Right,
1 and 2.
so that's what will be done.
Done. So when we find out what's out there, then we're gonna come to the committee and say, what do you all wanna do with it? Or do we wanna go further and actually legally identify?
Right, so the information that we receive,
And I read it
we'll
correctly.
bring them back to the committee to exactly decide, okay, this is what we found.
Right.
There are conflicts, right, with improvements that a property owner may have done. What do you want us to do? Yes.
Got it.
So the
They're gonna
answer-
identify encroachments
I
too,
was-
so if somebody
I
builds a
wasn't
shed.
100% sure when I read
Yeah.
it, so
Yeah.
I figured I had to
That's
ask to
correct.
clarify. Thank you.
And then Dan, the topos, that falls under the contingency services?
Correct, yeah, you wouldn't necessarily have to do it, like if you, say that little path that's between Bridgeport and White, you know, if you're not gonna do anything with it, you're just identifying the ownership, why would you wanna identify elevations and a bunch of other information?
Right.
You know, but if you are going to change it, we were thinking more or less like Gloria Rogers, you would probably change it if, you know, Brentwood bound is completed and you wanted to do more work there, at least you'd have the topography and all the other information that you could use at a later date. You know, you wouldn't have to send another surveyor back out there, they could pick up all the information with LiDAR or something.
And then I think Eric was wanting to have some type of database that would be of these properties,
Correct, yeah,
for
they will give us
future
a shape
use.
file, so that
Yeah.
later we will have a digital file that then we can give to another consultant
Put on
to
the
then
maps.
drop it in. You would
What's
have
that file called?
Like a shape file, like SHAPE.
Okay.
It's usually abbreviated like, I think, SHP, like the extension on the file, but
But that would be within the basic charges here?
I believe so.
Mhm.
Yeah,
We'd get
okay,
that.
there's your answer. I figured I'd defer to the person that put it together.
Okay.
That's the way I interpret it, and that's the way it is. And then, if you recall, the budget is actually split over to the two departments, so 35,000 comes from Public Works Capital, 35,000 from Fund 50, which is Parks. So
I guess
we
we
have
need-
70,000.
Any other questions? Motion to,
Motion to recommend to the full board to enter into a contract with TWM to do the surveying for the locations that we'd like to clarify who owns what.
And I will second the motion.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Do we need to do a 1 and 2 reading or staggered? Does it make a difference?
This will probably go on the consent.
And probably a
Straight up
resolution.
as a consent contract, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, Dan, thank you, and thank you, Heather,
Yes.
for showing up.
Be very interesting to see what you find.
Yep. Okay, where did I go?
That's right.
That is rain, yes.
It's heavy rain, well.
Give me 5 more minutes. I have a couple open issues.
Have one new business item, and that was to discuss the percentage of recovery of the parks programs.
Would you like to postpone that till Eric
I
is
can,
in?
I can do a, I can do a
hate to make
quick.
you feel like we don't need him.
Oh, well, he's sick, he's really sick.
Yeah,
Oh.
and the world should stop because of it.
And I don't think that we're going to resolve this tonight.
Oh.
So, what he did, and I think at the last meeting, it was such a short time period that he hadn't heard back from all our comparator cities, who we were surveying to find out whether those municipalities had established, a percentage of recovery. So what he provides you is, for those that did respond, the percentage recovery that they have, and those who don't have anything. So I think this is a next step for a continued discussion based on this. What are your thoughts, and what should we do?
Well, I actually brought this up in the budget process
Right.
because there was a chart in the budget and our percentage recovery, the actual percentage cost recovery for all programs in 18 was 130, basically 135%. And the projected for 2020 is 67%. So the difference struck me. Now, there may be a reason we want to do that, so I'm not necessarily saying that that's bad. It just, there were quite a few things that that are a lot more expensive in Parks and Rec than they were in actual of 18. So that just struck me in the budget process. So thank you for putting it on this agenda. There, I guess maybe we find out a little bit more and
Yes.
can decide whether this is a concern or not.
Do you think that, in looking at the comparable cities, do we need to know which ones have such like our parks stormwater tax, which maybe have a parks tax?
No, what I would be more interested in knowing is when you, the city of Brentwood, or you, the city of Brentwood with Richmond Heights and Maplewood, are offering a program. Is it in your thought process what is the cost and what is the pricing of the program and what you really think your market's gonna be as to, am I paying attention to this?
So I have a good example. There's a program this Saturday called, I think, Something Sensibilities.
Okay.
It's a STEM program. And the cost of the items that will be given away, which is like a plaque, and then the kids that are participating, we have 30. But we expect there'll be more. So it costs like $3.25 for the plaque and the matting and everything that's on it. But we don't add the cost of labor. Because we went to Home Depot, bought the wood, the Parks Department staff cut the wood, they painted it. So there's all that additional cost. So when we talk about cost recovery, because staff cost is constant, we don't include that in the true cost for the program. So already, it almost seems like there's a discount there already. So that is the philosophy in which we establish cost for programs. So there's not 100% recovery on all.
Not anticipate, but you want to run a program because you're trying to offer a service for your residents. I understand that part. But if I'm going to say, let's run a cooking class, and the cooking class is going to cost me $300 in materials to start in, does someone go, okay, if I have 20 people, by rights I need to raise $50 or 20, whatever, 300 by 20.
So we don't offer the cooking classes that you would take at a established cooking school.
Correct.
So ours is very low key, low cost, even almost prepared food. So it's a different.
Those costs,
Yeah.
is that considered in, well, let's see, if we're going to offer this program, that's where we're at.
We consider
Or I
that.
have 6 rooms and I can only offer 5 programs because I've got a room rental over here. So which one of my 6 is dropped in the way of don't put it in the calendar? I don't have enough information from the Parks Department as to how they choose what programs to run and what price to set something at.
So and I think Eric can speak
Yes.
as to this, but I think when they determine which programs to run, it's based on intel that other municipalities who have run similar programs and have been successful. That's why we think, oh, maybe we should do the same thing. For instance, the unicorn, activity that we ran during the Centennial. We had more people than we anticipated would come in because that was so successful.
Yes.
We're going to want to do that again, and that is an activity that we had in the park.
Yep.
So there's a difference between park and meeting rooms.
Yep.
And then there are programs that we jointly put on with other municipalities. A number of factors that go into how you calculate cost. It's not just cost solely.
May I continue? And it's your topic.
Oh, I asked a question at the Ways and Means Committee, and all of a sudden it's here, so I don't know.
We look at each year, what is the cost of a room rental? And we figure that cost as comparable to other municipalities and whether or not it stays consistent and if it can be affordable. If I raise it too high, you'll lose some of your people. But I don't have any real effect as to how, if we put something in the park program, how is the determination of whatever a fee might be is, and what basis supports that fee. The evaluation we've done over the years is the Parks Department offering programs that the citizens enjoy? And then Eric writes in his weekly reports, here's my participation arrangements, this is where we're at, or sorry, this one bombed out. The pumpkin was great, but we didn't get the numbers because it was raining that night. But other than that, we get no real heavy feedback as to how something's determined. I'm not looking to micromanage what he's doing. I'm trying to get a better understanding of how the service is being offered.
The philosophy of coming up with a program.
Yeah, cost to work with.
He can talk about this
Yeah.
at the next meeting.
Thank you.
But are you wanting to, what's the ultimate goal here? If this comes back to for next month, are you looking to establish a policy, a
No,
goal?
I'm looking to get an education.
Okay.
And I think when I asked the question, I was just surprised at how the cost recovery has gone down so much. So my question, being new, my question was, is that important and does that matter? And, I don't think we should only do, like cut everything and only do ice rental because we make a lot of money on that and we could make this percentage 500% or some,
Yes.
the goal is to offer things that are good for our citizens.
Right.
And there's some balance between
Right.
excellent programs
Right.
and cost. And I don't know what that balance is, and that's why Eric is here, but
Yep.
that just,
So what is your follow-up question
my fellow,
that Eric needs to address at the next meeting?
I guess sort of whether a cost reduction percentage is even important, if that's something, if that's what we should be looking, if that percentage is important and that's something we should be looking at, or whether it should be more a philosophy of we need to have we're aiming to have a certain kind of program for these kinds of citizens regardless of what we recover, for specialized skating or, toddlers and preschool kids and STEM and cooking.
Senior
and
citizens, let's just
Senior
get them together,
citizens, yeah.
get them out and get them doing something.
I don't have my budget book here, but I want to remind you that this one fund still manages to put a substantial amount of money in the fund balance every
Yeah.
year.
This one fund, which fund?
Stormwater.
Okay.
Yes.
Parks and Rec. Yes.
Yes, stormwater gets it.
Even greater than what we're setting aside in general fund. And that's why when we renovated the community center, the city was able to cash fund $2 million of that total cost.
Yes, because we took it from the stormwater fees that we hadn't been spending.
The fund balance.
Since it was park and storm, we could put it that way.
Right.
But we've been using that tax money to help cover the cost. In the past, I think we were running 90+% of the money coming in went to help
We
cover.
transferred, so
We tra-
before,
in
all
each-
the park, back when there were so many outstanding tips,
Yes.
all the park fees were going into the general fund. But once those, at least 3 of the tips paid off early, we transferred those fees, those revenues coming back to the parks and stormwater.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
We all good there?
Mm-hmm.
Move on to citizen comment. Still see no one else has shown up yet, so we'll move on to adjournment.
Can I have a couple of questions for staff?
Sure.
Following what you asked, that we bring it to the committee.
Right.
We're in a new decade, or next year will be a new decade, depending if you start at the 0 or the 1. BOLA 10 years ago, the city did a full municipal code review and update. Do we anticipate doing that again this decade? Or
We did that, I want to say, in.
2000.
Lisa, do you remember what year you were a consultant to the city?
11 and
You're
12.
speaking of like chapter 400 that was done in 2013.
2013
Yeah,
was when
wrapped
we
up
did
in
that.
2014.
No, I'm talking about, we did the full
We did the entire,
code.
yeah,
Yeah.
we did a
'Cause it was a decade,
recodification
yeah.
of the entire municipal code. It hasn't been 10 years.
It hasn't?
It hasn't.
Okay, so we're not anticipating playing that this year?
No.
Good, okay. The second question.
It was a massive project that
Oh,
was started before I was hired by the city.
Was that the recodification?
It was.
Yes,
Oh,
oh,
Wow.
and that,
Remember that?
and it went south because of different people's opinions.
Yeah.
Okay, the second one that I have is, if I may, we've normally gone out for grants and stuff for the recycle bins and for trash cans. And I would like to know if the city's looking at potentially doing another grant request this year. And the request I was made of was, are we looking more towards the trash can size of going after a grant? And the answer I gave the person was, that depends if the grant person, normally it was Midwest Waste or somebody, if they offered a potential grant type thing. And I don't know how you know if they do or don't.
Yeah, I checked with the county. The next round of grants is due in well, they'll give it to us, the applications they'll present in March.
Of
So
this
typ-
year?
Of this year.
So we may go in.
They'll tell you what's eligible and what isn't.
Okay.
Typically, it hasn't been trash cans for years. It's always been recycled cans, recycled carts, recycled bins. So the order that we placed last year, which they'll start, sending them here probably into this month, beginning of next, that's via grant. So I asked them to give me the invoice so that then we can pay it, and as soon as I pay it, then I turn it into the county, I get reimbursed. That's for recycled carts.
All right.
But I thought, well, we can get more recycled bins, whatever we want that's recycling, that's usually a given. But trash we can ask about, it's just,
Then my question to the committee is, could we direct staff to look at the number of trash cans that we currently have distributed through the city of Brentwood that hook onto the trucks for dumping purposes? And if it would be conceivable for the city to upfront buying more trash cans and selling them to our residents. What I'm looking to do is to make it easier on your trash picker-uppers that they hook up in the machine, instead of them lifting, getting it done more and more through the trash truck, since our trucks are capable of the dumping. But we have to have
Right.
more trash cans to make that possible. If there's no grant, do we want to look at purchasing a group and selling them out?
Well, this would have been a good for a budget question earlier this year.
The question didn't come to me at that time frame,
Just
so
a few
I,
weeks ago. I think the issue that Dan could also address is where do we store them? In the
yeah,
interim?
Yeah.
depends on how many you go out and buy type
Right.
thing. But I don't even know how many dumping trash cans we currently have in our,
of the original, like 2004s?
no, what you all see when you all
Oh.
run the city throughout the week.
I see.
How many cans are out there? Would it help
Yeah,
us?
I'd have to ask the drivers, because I don't pay
Okay,
attention.
and the second part is, would that help the drivers, or no, what you've got going works so well, leave it alone?
I would say it would help only because I know with Brentwood Forest, what we do is typically leave a cart lashed onto the tipper because they leave their trash in bags. So they'll pick up several bags, throw them in the tipper. When the tipper's full, hit the lever, dump that in there. We do it with truck 3 too, which is the littler truck. That way you're not throwing your shoulder out trying to pitch it above the rail
Yep.
to get it up in there. They put it in the hopper, which is just the cart.
The question is it worth directing to let them look at such and come back and say yay or nay or something of that nature? Or, yes, I'm out of line because I didn't do it in the budget side, so nobody's put any money in the system to do this at this point.
I heard from a resident a few months back about they had moved from a different municipality who charged for trash and charged for cans, and she wasn't really aware that they were charging her every month, but she really liked the larger cans, and she had a small car and had difficulty. She didn't know how she was going to get a big trash can into a Prius to get to her house. So I think I talked to Dan and talked her through it, but I will say there was some interest in that, but the logistics of it may be.
And I guess something to think about is, if we got this through a grant, and are we selling it or are we giving it? Or
That-
are we
that depends-
selling it at a discount?
That depends on the perception of where you came. If it's a grant arrangement and we bring them in and somebody's funded it for us, great. If you, the city, let's assume you go out and buy 200 trash cans to work with, cost us this much. Okay, any resident wanting them, they're at this cost that we paid for it, come pick them up. And you pay it, boom. But we're not looking to make money off of it as much as if I get them out on the street, I've helped my collectors. And I'm looking for a way to hopefully do that with them type thing. Now, I have 9 trash cans at my house because you keep it 50 pounds.
Right.
And I can just keep putting them out and go. This fact that we don't charge by the can
We do not.
is marvelous. But if I can get it so that they don't have to dump them, but you just hook and go that route, yeah. Makes it easier on the guys and on staff. Why not try it? But if we can't do it, then we can't do it. If you want to consider a budget item for next year type thing, and the city does some research and says, hey, these are the type cans, and we can't get a grant, this is what, and come back and say, okay, I've got out of the 2,000, 3,000 that were out there, out of the 4,000 homes that are there, another 200 or 300 cans would make a difference or wouldn't?
Yeah, because I know we could bring back to you the
Numbers.
cost, that's not a problem, because I
Yeah.
know, roughly speaking, it's $40 for a 65-gallon recycle cart.
Yes,
To get a trash cart, it'd be the same price, it'd be a different color, and it wouldn't be hot stamped recycles, it would just have the Brentwood logo, like these say St. Louis County Department of Health on one side, and then Brentwood on the other, they're green, it says recycling only.
only,
You just customize it, and again, it'd be like roughly $40 with freight and everything. But they also make bigger ones, so would you want a 95-gallon, because we can get
I
a
thought
quote
the
on that.
96, when they were talking.
Yeah, there's a 95, 96, and
Six.
there's a 64, 65.
Yeah.
Everybody's is a little different, that's why they're not all 65s across the board.
As long as the, whatever it is.
They'd all have the lifting
Yep, that
lugs on
hooks
them.
to our
Yeah.
machine. Now, I don't know what a 96-gallon capacity trash can weighs when it's
Empty?
full.
Oh, when it's
type
full,
thing.
yeah.
Now, my intent is not to get people to yell, if
Right.
that's the case. But I'm just trying to go, anything that helps reduce their having to pick up
Right.
something should be considered.
Yeah, because I have a 96 through Republic, and full, I would guess 50, 60, 70 pounds, I don't know. It just
Yeah.
depends on what you put in
Drag
it.
it slow.
Well, they got wheels, and I love
Yeah, they
wheels.
all-
Mine don't have wheels, I drag.
That hard plastic, I mean, those cans aren't that light either.
No,
No.
the can itself
No.
is heavy, yeah.
Well,
Oh, yeah, because I have
figure
one of
all the
those, so-
abuse it goes through.
I know.
But I, it
But if
was
you want, we can bring the
requested,
prices back and
it was
say,
requested if the city would look at it. So I go, okay, come in.
So
and-
I think timing is good. So
We got a whole
if
year
the
to play with it.
committee wants to
Yeah.
direct Dan that perhaps instead of applying for the grant for recycle carts and totes,
Right.
that maybe we apply for trash cans instead. I mean, it will
Right.
take a number of cycles for everyone in the city
To get 'em.
to get one.
Yeah,
right.
but
There is budget for sanitation capital, it's a 40 line, and it's like 65, 54, and it's 15,000. I only know because I looked at it last week.
For what?
For sanitation capital, that could be buying dumpsters, because we supply our own dumpster at the rec center.
Okay.
And we had to replace it, because over time the steel corrodes, and it's cheaper to
So you
replace.
can reallocate this funds to buy trash
Right.
cans instead of
Like
dumpsters.
last year, we hardly touched any of it because we had enough, we bought 250 recycle carts, so that's gonna come out of the 20 budget, but then I'm gonna get reimbursed, so then I'll have some money back in.
But when are you gonna know the grant eligibility?
Usually they let us know like a month or so after you apply, so if the applications come out in March, I would think by, probably no later than May, June.
Can we wait till?
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was just
then
asked,
revisit this?
I was just asked if the city ever
Right.
looked at it, and the answer is,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Since we bid at the end of last year, I mean, I could just ask them for rough numbers, not hold them to that, but at least give me a range for the different sizes you're talking about. It would be non-binding, but it would at least tell you, hey, if you supplied 250, 300 times this multiplier,
Mhm.
it's,
Would
you
it
know,
be, and would it be
15,000.
worth doing for the city?
Right. Do you want to spend 12, 15,000
No.
for this? And if not,
But
at least you know.
Okay, so we're gonna wait till March,
I'm
see
just-
what we got the.
Yep,
what
just
type
drop
of
it in
grants
here.
are possible. Okay,
Okay.
then we'll do that.
That's easy.
I'm just curious that, because I've had my trash can so long, if somebody moves into Brentwood and they need a trash can.
They go buy it.
Yes.
We recommend like what we would like to
Well,
see
that's
them,
my
but we
question.
can't actually force them to get the ones that we would like to see. Versus what you're saying is like, this is what we want because it's more beneficial.
Hooks to the
Because they'll
machine.
spend $20 and get a metal one with a flimsy little lid, and then it blows away at the first sign of a wind, and then they blame us that you lost my lid. It's like, well, the lid was never tethered. It could have fallen over, and, you know,
It ended up in.
What
the
about
truck.
yard waste then?
yard waste people either supply the craft paper bags at their cost, or they can dedicate a receptacle that just says yard waste, or
You can
if
put
it's
them in the
like
trash
trees,
thing,
you
but you
can
can't
bundle
mix.
them.
Well, no, I know, but.
Yeah, we just don't want cross-contamination. We
Yeah.
had some guy put his grass clippings in a recycle cart and said, well, you didn't pick up my yard waste. It's like, that's a recycle cart we bought, we can't pick it up because if people see that, that perception is that we'll just take anything in a recycle cart, and we don't want that. And you really need to go buy the bags or dedicate.
Well, just remind me, come.
Be happy to. Thank you for letting me inject it.
Sure. Anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you all.
Paid Shelley a visit.
Congratulations, I love a man.
He filed for Ward 3.
Yes.
You fun?
Mr. Robert Montague, Debbie Montague's son.
You don't know the history.
I've dealt with her for 20 years.
His mom has